you have these narrations in Judaism, it is forbidden to call God by his true name. You find that in the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, that it is forbidden to name the 12th Imam by his name, just in the same way as YHWH in Judaism, the same thing here. Mim, M, Ha, H, Mim, M, Dad, D. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الإمام المهديين وسلم تسليما السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear sister Tiffany.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for having me back today.
Well, thank you for being back. So today we want to talk about a really important topic, and that is the topic of the secret name/names of God. Okay? So we have this kind of theme that pops up in religion. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Less so in Christianity, more so in Judaism and in Shia Islam. Not even so much Sunni Islam, although it does appear a little bit.
Okay.
And this is this concept that there are these secret names or a secret name of God that, if pronounced, can bestow superpowers upon the individual. So the idea that that was written about it was that when God met Moses at the burning bush, Moses, he goes there, he hears God's voice. It's this voice that's coming from 360 degrees. He looks, he sees that there's this burning bush in front of him. It's fire, but it's not like normal fire. The bush itself is not burning, but there's this fire that's on it, And so he asks, God at the end of the conversation, so he gets all these commandments from him. He gets all of these, all this information, he gets all this direction from him. And at the very end, Moses says to God, okay, well, when the Israelites ask me, when I go back to him and I say that, like, you have to do this and you got to do this and this is the plan and these are the commandments, when they ask me, who sent you? What should I say? Which is crazy because it's either one of two things. Either Moses at that point knows who sent him and he just knows that it's a secret, and so therefore he's asking God for what name he would like to be called by in public, Or at that point, Moses doesn't even know who he's talking to, and he doesn't even know who's sending him. Yeah. And then the response comes back, to Moses that, tell them, I am that I am sent me. Yeah. I am that I am. And then after that, the idea became that God did not want to tell them his name directly, but it was more like a response whereby he's just telling them, that it is what it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is what it is. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Yeah. I am, all that you think that I am. I am the God of gods. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Instead of telling him that, like, my name is Jack, or my name is John, or my name is Joshua, right?
Yeah.
But then later on in the Bible, we see that there are some people who actually come to learn and know that God does have this name. But it's a sacred name that nobody else is allowed to know except for the priests, that is, the head priest that is dealing with the Ark of the Covenant, that is the hujjah of the time, so to speak, or the person who is communicating, who's left in charge to communicate between God and between the people.
Yeah.
And even in writing in the Hebrew Bible, it became impermissible to write the name of God. And so how did they write it?
The 4 letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. YHWH. That's how we have it in, that's how we translate it into English, but obviously it was in the ancient Hebrew language.
Yeah. So then God became referred to in 2 ways. One, he was referred to as Hashem, which means the name.
Yeah.
You know, so whenever they'd want to refer to like God, instead of saying, you know, it would be like for Christians, instead of saying Jesus, right, because they consider Jesus to be God, it would be impermissible. It's too much to call him Jesus. So instead of calling him Jesus, you know, the people that did not yet know him, you know, to that level, they could only refer to him as the name, you know,
yeah, okay.
when talking about him. So they wouldn't say Jesus went and did or said such and such. They would say the name went and said such and such.
Okay.
It would almost be like the word Allah for Muslims is forbidden for anybody to name, you know, or to say, but rather you would have to refer to it as al-ism.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. And then there is a clue, though, that there are these 4 letters, because at other points he's referred to as these 4 letters, which is the YHWH, with all vowels removed from the name itself. And it's unclear if there are other, you know, letters besides the vowels that were moved. But the idea is that if you take any word and you remove from it the vowels, it becomes unknown how it is that you would pronounce it.
Yeah. You can't pronounce YHWH.
No,
so,
you can't.
Yeah.
And there becomes like a multitude of ways that you could pronounce it.
Yeah.
You know, so you could pronounce it Yahweh or Yahweh, or you could pronounce it Jehovah, or so there's becomes all of these different ways of being able to pronounce the name. So essentially the name is safeguarded and it's lost.
Yeah.
There are these traditions that mention that the rabbis wrote and said that the name was once known, and it was 12 letters, and the people they that weren't deserving, they all knew the name, and when they knew the name, they realized that the truth or the reality was not as they thought. And so instead of adjusting their thinking to what it really is, what they did is they corrupted the meaning and twisted the truth instead. And for that reason, that's part of the reason why the name was taken from them once again, and they were not allowed to, or it was lost and they were not allowed to speak it openly.
Wow. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so from that we come to the conclusion that there's a heavy reality or understanding that comes along with knowing this name. We know that in both Judaism and Islam, Adam, he knew this name. There were a few prophets and messengers that did know the name, and there were many prophets and messengers that only knew parts of the name, you know, or certain letters from the name. In the Quran, when it says, and God taught Adam all of the names, this is an indication that Adam clearly knew also the name of God, because it is an unlimited statement. You know, there's no exceptions to it when it says all of the names. So it's all of the names of the things in addition to the name of God. And the assumption is that because he knew the true name of God, that he gained authority and power over the angels and all other living beings.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. It does say clearly that he knew the names of all things.
But there are traditions, hadiths from the Ahlul Bayt that state that other prophets and messengers, they didn't know the names of, the full name of God. And there's also this concept in Islam that there is the greater name of God. So in Islam, Allah, or the 99 names of God, these would just be names of God.
Okay.
Okay?
Like attributes of God.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they're just names of God.
Okay.
Okay? But then there's this thing that appears in the narrations where there's this greater name of God.
Okay.
And the greater name of God, it's not explicitly said exactly what it is. Sometimes it's said what it is, and there are traditions that state that huwa, or he, is the greater name, or Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is the greater name, or that Al-Hayy al-Qayyum is the greater name, the one who is living and the everlasting, the one who is able to rise from his own self. Or sustain creation from his own self. They say in some narrations that this is the greater name. But in most narrations, it is a secret and remains a secret. And then there's something which is the greater name of God. And then there's something which is thrice great, the greater name of God. Al-Ism al-Azam and Al-Ism al-Azam al-Azam and Al-Ism al-Azam al-Azam al-Azam. Okay. The narrations state that the greater name of God, or the greater name of God, it's unclear then like which of the greater names it is that has this amount of letters, but it is stated in some narrations that it has 72 letters.
Wow.
That the name is so long and it's so great, and a person can compile it. And it consists of 72 letters, and it really is made up of 73 letters, the narration state. But the ones who have the greater name in almost its entirety is Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and they only have 72 letters out of the 73 letters.
Okay.
And that the only one who has the final letter is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. God Almighty himself is the only one who has that last letter. And it is stated that nobody can know God unless they know all of the letters.
Oh.
So as much as you have letters, that's as much as you know of God. And as much as you know of God is as much as you are able to perform miracles or, command things in the name of God, and it responds to you. It's the higher that your soul gets is the more that you know from his name. And it's kind of like, if you're to simplify things, if you're speaking to an individual, and you don't know their name, then you obviously know them very little. It's like they're a stranger to you.
Yeah.
In the same way, God of the Old Testament, even though he was with the Israelites and he was their God and they were his people and he chose them and they took him as a Lord over them, you'll notice that they always keep going astray.
Yeah.
And they were like strangers to God, and God was like a stranger. Well, they weren't strangers to God. God knew them very well,
yeah.
But he remained a stranger to them.
Yeah.
And so this idea that God was like the stranger to the Israelites and they never knew him by name, and at the same time, they continued to disobey him and always do those things which upset him, is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And Ahmed Hassan he gave this example, in the Book of Monotheism, when speaking about the greater name of God, where he said that, for example, if a person knew Muhammad, all of the letters of the name Muhammad, and if you knew him, if you knew all those letters, you could, and the name, you could say, I know Muhammad. right? But if you're missing the dal, if you're missing the D in the end of Muhammad, can you still say that you know Muhammad? No, you would say then that you know Muhammad, and that's a whole different character.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh my gosh,
you can grab the attention of the individual by calling their name.
Yeah.
So your name is Tiffany, right?
Yes.
You know, if I say Tiffany, you're going to look back at me,
Yeah.
right? Because I grabbed your attention, because I called you by your name. The same idea with God. If I just said, hey, Tiff, you would probably still look.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, those prophets and messengers that knew some of the letters from the holy name, they could still know enough of the letters to grab the attention of God, and that he would, you know, respond to their supplication, you know, because they knew him partially, but they didn't know him in his entirety. To call you Tiff, maybe this is just kind of like you know, a sathi type of relationship, you know, a friendship. A colleague might call you something like this, where maybe somebody that's closer to you in a more intimate setting would call you Tiffany, right?
Yeah.
You know, by your because
name.
that's kind of like a nickname. This is your full name.
Yes.
Right? And somebody who even knew you better would call you Tiffany Oldani. And then somebody who knew you better than that would know, for example, the name of your father or the name of your grandfather.
Yeah.
Right? So the more names that they know about Tiffany, the more intimate the relationship is, the more that they are close to this individual. The same thing over here.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. It's a beautiful way of thinking about it, this relationship of the name, knowing the letters of the name, and this closeness to God. It's a very interesting way of thinking about it that I never thought of before.
In the narrations too, it's unclear. You know, when it says like the letters, you know, and that there's 72 letters, it's unclear if those letters are the same like our letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, it's unclear if alif would be counted as one letter or not.
Okay.
Alif is like the A of Arabic.
Yes.
And the A of Hebrew. So it's unclear, because in some narrations, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they say that Alif Lam Mim in the beginning of one of the surahs, that this makes up one letter. Even though it's 3 Arabic letters that are combined together, these 3 Arabic letters count in the narration as one of the letters from the 72 or 73 letters that make up the greater name of God.
Very interesting.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's one of the mysteries in the Quran, is that in the Quran, they have these letters that are called like the cut up letters in the beginning of certain surahs in the Quran, like Alif Lam Mim Ra, you have Noon, you have Taha, Alif Lam Mim Sad, you know, so people have been confused as to what these letters in the very beginning of certain surahs are even referring to. Some have said, oh, these are different names of the Prophet Muhammad, that one of his names is Noon, and one of his names is Taha, and one of his names is, you know. Other people have said that, no, what it is that some of these letters are actually referring to, or are code words for the Imams from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. You know, so you might have, you know, because the Arabic letters are 28, and there are 14 letters that are called the al-huruf al-nuraniyya, the light letters, and it is these light letters that are mentioned at the beginning of certain verses from the Quran. So half of 28, which is the complete alphabet in Arabic, is 14. There's 14 infallibles, and therefore each one of these letters represents one of the infallibles. So one of them is Fatima Zahra, one of them is Imam Ali, one of them is Muhammad. They're code words for, you know, for their names.
That is really fascinating. I've always wondered about these letters in the beginning of certain surahs, because they're quite a mystery. What are they doing there? What is the meaning of them? And it's interesting to hear this potential explanation.
Yeah, other people have said that they represent certain prophets and messengers that have come through throughout history. But what we do know for sure from the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is that they are all letters from the greater name of God, that only the Hujjah from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, he can take them and he can basically formulate them together, mesh them together, or invent from them not invent, but like he'll be able to rediscover like pieces from the puzzle. You put them all together and then it forms the greater name of God. So the idea is that the secret name of God is in the Quran, but it's like cut up by these light words, light letters being split up, and that if they're combined together, they will reveal that name. And if you know the name, you can call upon the deity, and the deity will always respond, because now you have an intimate relationship with him. If you can get to know his name, then now you become God's friend, like Abraham was. Okay. Where now, like, he'll tell you what his name is, as to where before he's a stranger to most people.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so that, in short, is the idea. And for the Jews, like the knowing that name was important, because the head priest that would go behind the curtains in the holiest of holies, and he knew the name of God, he would be protected from being struck down and killed. As to where somebody else, if they didn't know the name of God and they walk into his house, and they violate his sanctity, and they are in his presence without having been invited, it would be like a stranger that's breaking into a home. And what would you do if you woke up one day and there's a stranger in your home? You would strike them down, right? Yes, you would attack them because they entered into your home without permission. Mm-hmm. The same thing is going on there.
Well, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And that explains why this was the case, that people who would enter without permission, they would be struck down. It was not allowed for people to enter God's presence without having been given permission.
Exactly. Okay, so now we have Moses. He goes and he encounters God. God is in the fire at the burning bush. Mm-hmm. God doesn't want that the rest of the Israelites know, what his true name is. Mm-hmm. But he tells Moses. And we know that he tells Moses because there's other priests that end up knowing the name. So, and Moses was greater than them, so therefore he must have told Moses.
Yeah.
And then, he commands Moses to build for him this ark, this house. It's a house that can be transported, that can move from place to place. And this house becomes referred to as the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah. And so now this Spirit, which is the Spirit of God, that is dwelling in the tree, in the bush, and that according to narrations formerly dwelt upon the top of the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, and that it also has another name, and its name is this Shekinah. In Arabic, it would be the Sakina. And there's in Arabic and Hebrew, there's always this interchange between the sheen and the seen. Okay. That's why, just FYI, that's why Muslims will say, Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
Peace be upon you. And the Jews will say, Shalom alaikum, right? Because the seen becomes a sheen with them, and the sheen is a seen over here.
Okay? Interesting.
Yeah. So it's very, very similar, the language, and we can talk about that in another episode. So, shalom, Sakina, Shekinah, this tranquility.
Okay.
That's what Sakina means, tranquility. This tranquility was resting, the Shekinah, the Spirit of God, was resting above the tree in the garden. And then when it meets Moses, it's meeting Moses in the bush.
Yes.
Then it doesn't want to stay in the bush anymore. It needs to rest somewhere, to dwell somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay? Sakina also means to dwell. And so it commands him to make the ark, and it dwells in the ark and above the ark and hidden behind the wings of the two cherubim that is on top of the Ark of the Covenant, right? Right above the throne of mercy, which is at the center between the two wings of the cherubim.
Yeah.
And now, because he has this new home, the home is able to be carried.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very specific about how he wants it built. He wants these images of angels. He wants it, plated in gold. It has to be made from this, certain type of wood.
Yes.
It all has to be done perfectly.
Yeah.
Then what takes place? Do you know?
The Spirit of God dwells in the Ark of the Covenant.
But they build a tent for it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they make a special room in the tent for the ark to be in.
Yes.
And they draw these curtains in front of the ark.
Yeah.
And when they build the temple, the same thing takes place. There's this room which is the holiest of holies.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's veiled.
Yeah.
And that's where he dwells. And there's this distance that is between him and the rest of the Israelites, and only those who are God's chosen representatives can approach and cross beyond the veil.
Yes, exactly. The priests, the people who are allowed to enter. Yeah.
Exactly. And this whole thing, you see this concept, paralleled on a greater scale in the story of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, or the night ascension of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where, if you imagine the temple, and it has this outer courtyard where most of the Israelites were, and then you can go into the tabernacle, and then in the end you get to the holiest of holies behind this veil. The same thing is playing out in creation, whereby you have the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you have these different heavens and these different realms, and the Prophet was able to cross through all of them, and he is the only one who was allowed on the night journey to cross beyond the veil, the emerald veil that was between God and the rest of creation.
Okay.
So on a larger scale, on a macro scale, God is behind this veil, right?
Yes.
And creation is below.
Yeah.
And with the Israelites, the I am that I am, he is also behind the veil in the holiest of holies, and the only one who could cross is the chosen vicegerent of God.
Yes. Yeah. It does parallel, exactly. There are these barriers between most of creation and God, and Prophet Muhammad was able to break through these barriers and come so close to God, only 2 bows length distance from God. So yes, he was the one who was able to be in the presence of God because he knew God, right?
And then you have the Quran describing what it is that is in this Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant in Arabic is called Tabut as-Sakina.
Okay.
And in Judaism and in Islamic narrations and traditions, the Tabut of the Sakina, the coffin of the Shekinah, is what it's translated to.
Okay.
Okay, because it basically was built as if it was one of those ancient Egyptian coffins.
Yeah.
In the same form.
Okay.
That they would put in there the body parts.
Yeah.
Except there's no body parts in the Ark of the Covenant. In the place of the body parts or the organs that they used to contain in the jars, what did they place in the Ark of the Covenant? According to Islamic narrations and Jewish narrations, in there was some relics that were left behind by the family of Moses and the family of Aaron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, interesting.
What were those relics? The staff or the rod of Aaron.
Yeah.
The manna. And the tablets that had the commandments of God. And there are narrations that state that there was one or two other items, but we'll leave that for now.
Okay.
Okay? In the Quran, it says that in the Tabut al-Sakina is a remnant, baqiyya, from that which was left by the families of Moses and Aaron.
Okay.
This word baqiyya, or the remnant of that which was left from them, the remnant of God, in the verse that has to do with the Sakina.
Okay.
Okay. The Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And another verse in which it states, Baqiyatullah khayrun lakum in kuntum mu'minin. The remnant of God is better for you if you are believers.
Okay.
Okay? So now we have this spirit, the Shekinah, it's talking, and then we have it being associated with the Ark of the Covenant, and then we have the verse saying that it's the remnant of God and the family of God, Moses and Aaron, that had, that's left in the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is the home of the deity, and then we have this other verse that says the remnant of God is better for you if you are believers.
Okay.
The interpretation of this verse, which is what is quite stunning and odd and bewildering to the mind, is that the verse itself ends up being interpreted by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam as being a verse that is referring to the 12th Imam, Mohammed ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam.
Okay.
Baqiyatullah is a name that is given by the family of Muhammad to the 12th Imam because he is the final Imam, the only living remnant of the 14 infallibles or the 12 Imams, the remnant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the family of Muhammad are referred to as the family of Allah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It is extremely interesting, but it even gets more mysterious and interesting than that, because just as you have these narrations in Judaism that state that it is forbidden to call God by his true name, you find that in Shia Islam, in the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, it is stated that it is forbidden to name the 12th Imam by his name.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a narration that says that his body is not seen and his name is not said.
Okay. Well.
But yet people think that his name is Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari.
Yeah.
But it seems that the 12th Imam has a name that's forbidden, or has a secret name, a greater name. There's a reality to his name that's not stated. Just in the same way as YHWH in Judaism, the same thing here.
Okay.
And his name, Muhammad, is literally cut up in some narrations. In the tradition of the will, for example, in one narration it states that, and then if death comes to Al-Hassan al-Askari, let him pass it on, the 11th Imam, let him pass it on, meaning the matter, to his son, the safeguarded from the family of Muhammad, whose name is Mim, M, Ha, H, M, Mim, Dal, D, MHMD.
Okay.
All the vowels are removed from the name Muhammad, and we're left with those 4 letters, MHMD, just like all the vowels are removed from the name of God in the Old Testament, and we're left with those 4 letters, YHWH. same thing that's happening here is the same thing that's happening here. The traditions state that only a disbeliever, Judaism says only a disbeliever would dare pronounce the name of God, the true name of God. There are narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that say that the 12th Imam, nobody calls him by his name except a disbeliever.
Wow.
And yet other narrations mention him as being, his name is Muhammad.
Okay. So he has like an apparent name and a hidden name.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a fascinating parallel because, I mean, as you mentioned, there's this parallel between the 4 letters and the 4 letters, and nobody knows how they should be pronounced. And this connection between the remnant being the ark and the remnant being the 12th Imam. It's very interesting that there are these parallels going on between Judaism and the understanding of God and in Islam as well, in the narrations.
Well, in some narrations, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says that he is the greater name of God. And in the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, they refer to themselves, the members of the household, as being the names of God.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And the 12th Imam is being mentioned as being the remaining part from that name of God.
Okay.
And so we have something that's fascinating that's taking place here, something that's mysterious.
Yeah.
And I think that it's even more mysterious that that remaining part of God, Baqiyatullah, and the Shia all know this, and they make du'as, and they ask God to hasten the relief of Baqiyatullah, because he went into an absence, he went into an occultation, he disappeared. People don't see him. Hence the hadith says, his name is not said, and his body is not seen. And so it makes you wonder, what is the great secret that is behind the mysterious division of the letters, or the cutting up of the letters of the name of MHMD? When we investigate a little bit further in the narrations, we find that Imam Ali alayhi salam states in some of the narrations all of his names and all of the things that he did throughout history. And he states that he is the one who struck on behalf of David when David hit Goliath. And he says that he is the one who brought down the punishment upon the people of Noah. And he's the one who did this, and he's the one who did that. And then one of the things that he mentions is that he is Mukallim Musa, the speaker to Moses. He is the one who spoke to Moses.
Okay.
Who spoke to Moses? I am that I am.
Yes.
Who's saying that he spoke to Moses? Imam Ali. The same Imam Ali who also stated that he was the greatest name of God, right?
Oh.
The greatest sign of God, and who's a member of the household. Oh, this is extremely interesting now.
It's very interesting.
It is extremely interesting.
And very mysterious.
Very, very, very mysterious. Now, the narrations then later, they also state that the Mahdi, they're talking about the time of the Mahdi, they say, they're describing all of the signs that are going to take place. And then one narration states, and so when all that happens, then expect the appearance of the one who spoke to Moses on the mount.
Okay.
So now we have what? We have the narrations saying that it was the Ahlul Kisa alayhi salam, Imam Ali specifically, that spoke to Moses from the burning bush. And that in the time of the Mahdi, the character I am that I am that spoke to God, spoke to Moses on the burning bush is going to reappear again. But it's referring to him as the Mahdi.
Yeah.
So I am that I am that was with Moses was actually Muhammad and the family of Muhammad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am that spoke to Moses will be in the time of the Mahdi, and that actually he is the Mahdi.
That's amazing.
Or he is a Mahdi.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And then you have the same treatment of the name of the 12th Imam, MHMD, as YHWH. YHWH is invisible from the Israelites. They never see him.
Yeah.
He's veiled. He's hidden.
Yeah.
12th Imam, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, he's veiled from the Muslims. He's hidden.
He's the hidden Imam.
He's in an occultation. He's the hidden Imam, so to speak.
Yes. Wow.
But he is the remnant of God, like the remnant that's left in the ark.
Yeah.
Right? Which is actually literally the literal dwelling place of the Shekinah.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
It is fascinating.
I mean, the parallels are so clear.
It is clear. And people have associated in the past, especially in Christianity, the Shekinah with being the Holy Ghost.
Yes.
Or the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the Spirit of God.
Yes.
The Spirit of God that was blown into Adam. Well, the narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, they state that the prostration of the angels to Adam was not really a prostration to Adam, but it was a prostration to the light of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, which was blown into Adam.
Wow. Yeah.
So that means that Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, they are the light of God, the Spirit of God. And they spoke to Moses, and they were with every prophet and messenger. And they're going to appear in the time of the Mahdi. I am that I am makes a comeback. And then essentially, what they're saying is that the God of the Old Testament is Muhammad and the family of Muhammad.
Yeah.
The Ahlul Kisa.
Yeah. That's I am
Muhammad,
who I am.
Fatima, Jesus, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, and Ali ibn Abi Talib. Those six, the people of the cloak, Muhammad, Ali, Fatima, Al-Hassan, Al-Hussein, Gabriel, who is Jesus.
Yeah.
That those six are I am that I am.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they are the ultimate God.
Yeah.
But it means that they are that Spirit of God.
Yes.
That came first in the form of Jesus, and then Jesus says, I'm going to send another member of the, right? And then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes, and we have an episode about that, the Paraclete that's on the channel. And they appear at this moment, and it was them that enforced all of the prophets and the messengers, and all of them had a part of the Spirit in them, but they manifested in its entirety as Jesus and as Muhammad and as the 14 infallibles.
That is, I mean, it just perfectly blends all of these three faiths and all of these verses. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, and as you mentioned, it's part of the Jewish faith that the Spirit that spoke, that I am that I am, that spoke to Moses at the burning bush, was residing in the Ark of the Covenant, and they're waiting for that Spirit to return also in the end times, when the temple is rebuilt and the Ark is restored, and the Spirit is going to come back. So everybody's actually waiting for the same thing, and it comes in the form of the 12th Imam. It's so beautiful. Yeah.
So the 12th Imam is the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah. It's a more beautiful dwelling place for this Spirit, you know. A man is a more beautiful dwelling place for the Spirit of God.
Absolutely. If people believe that the Spirit of the Lord could dwell in a bush or in a wooden box that's plated in gold, then they have to believe that it can dwell in a more honorable place. And a human being is more honorable than wood, and he's more honorable than gold, and he's more honorable of a creation and more beloved of a creation to God than the bush. And so when God speaks to mankind from the bush or from the ark, we have to believe also that God can speak to mankind through a human being. And he does so in the most perfect way. In perfect ways through the prophets and the messengers up to Jesus. He spoke to them perfectly through Jesus and perfectly through Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Well, God bless you, Tiffany. Let's stop there, and inshallah we'll continue in another episode.
Thank you so much for this beautiful explanation, and it's such an amazing topic, and I can't wait to learn more from you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.